Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing amazing and having a good time. It's been a minute since I last uploaded a video. I mean, it's been about 5 to 6 months. But oh well, I am glad that we are finally here. Life has been lifing. Anyways, I am glad you're here. For those that are new to this channel, my name is Najemba Lisa Jemba, a lawyer by profession, an advocate in the making. I passed my bar course, yes, and graduated, I think, 2 months back, because now we're in March. But okay, I'm recording this in March, so I graduated about 2 months back. Yes, from Law Development Center. So it's a privilege for me to be here once more, right now, but in a different capacity. So like you have read down in the description box below, I will be sharing with you tips on how to excel your orals exams while at LDC. Tips that worked for me and I believe that will work for you if you probably pick them up. So hopefully you enjoy and get to learn with me. So these are things I hoped to have known before going for my orals, and I think that will be beneficial for you. So come along with me, enjoy. Yeah, let's get straight into it. So let's get straight into it. Tip number 1 I'll be sharing with you is to pray. Personally, I'm a Christian and I believe in God with all my heart, my mind, my soul, my strength, my everything. So before I went for any oral exam, I prayed to God, of course. You probably hear stories at the center that you see even God can't save you. Well, personally for me, I am pro God, so I'll definitely tell you that the number 1 tip is to pray. First of all, to pray for the panelists you're going to be facing, to pray that they that they show mercy to you, that they ask questions that you yourself personally can interpret, and have the ability to answer. You pray for your own confidence to be able to answer the questions, you pray to God and ask him to be able to answer questions despite them being, I don't know whether easy or hard, but even if they would be hard, such that you're in position to answer them, however confusing they may be. So tip number 1 is pray. So yeah, that's tip number 1. So now tip number 2 is to find a solution for your nerves. Right, let me share with you my experience. So when we're headed for orals, they have to organize the seats and all. So our AD ensured that of course the rooms were prepared, I think a few days, because I think by then we're coming from the Easter season, I don't know, but one of those things. So they took like 4 days preparing those rooms. So some of our classmates snuck in and went and took pictures, and then they shared. I remember them sharing seats, panel seats of 12 seats. And oh my God, imagine heading for orals and you're literally going to face 12 people. So when those pictures are circulating on the internet in our different farm groups, you guys, our nerves got the best of us. Oh my God, imagine facing 12 people, all of them asking you questions. Where you mess up, they probably laugh at you. And probably it's going to happen probably in your lot, and even the next one, because that's just how life at the bar is. But you need to find a solution for your nerves. Personally, a solution for my nerves is to smile. I will give you a thorough smile. I will be very scared, by the way, but I will give you a smile and you'll be like this chick. So for me, one of the ways, of course, besides prayer, another solution I realize is that if I smile often, I tend to heal the nerves, So I would enter some panels where you'd enter panels and everyone's like, oh my God, that panel is very hard. But I would enter, they would say, hello. There's a panel I entered, I think it was my civil panel. It was a Saturday, I remember. So they're like, hello, how are you? I was like, I'm good, how are you? And I remember all the panelists saying to themselves, Banange, this chick. Now she's literally really, really happy. So anyway, it helped me calm my nerves. I don't know. It's like a mechanism I used to cope to find ways of dealing with my nerves. So I would smile, you'd ask me a very serious question and I'm like, thank you so much for that question. Well, my understanding is this, then I would explain, but with a thorough smile. Though there's a panel I entered. I think it was the criminal panel. I was smiling endlessly. I entered. It was the criminal panel. I entered with a very serious smile. I am happy. I'm like, hello. Trust me, they were unimpressed. In my head, I said, most one day, I am going to give you guys I'm going to give you guys a thorough smile, and I'm not going to get scared. I'm not going to shut down. I'm going to smile endlessly. And yeah, so they asked me that very tough questions with a very tough face, but I would say thank you so much for that question. I remember one of my questions was in regards to, I think, submission on rape, something like that. Of course, now it's rape, you can't be smiling. Of course, I was very serious. Of course, before you ask me the question, I am smiling, but you know, you've got to find something that helps you calm your nerve. And no matter what you do, especially for the ladies, do not cry. You know, sometimes our gender, no, I'm not trying to be like, okay, I'm really gender sensitive, but we ladies tend to, I don't know, express our emotions in different ways, among which includes tearing. Please don't tear. You know, be very strong. Even when you're very scared and you're shaking, use your tiptoes to experience that being nervous, you know, and it will help you. Like, if you find ways of coping with that nervousness, you're good to go. For me, it was smiling. I would give you a very thorough smile, even if you come out. I remember the criminal panel wanted me to shudder, guys. I jumped. I said, no, I'm gonna smile and give it my best. And it did help. It did help. Of course, for the guys who can't come in smiling, it would be a bit weird, but it helps. Yeah. That's one of a coping mechanism I think I can share. Yeah. So now tip number 3 is do not undermine even the simplest of questions. You know, we tend to think that the more complicated things you read, the higher the possibility of being asked those questions and being able to answer them, guys. Now, let me tell you the funny thing. You see those complicated topics? They are actually the very easiest to read, because I think due to the pressure that comes with orals, it's very easy for you to understand those things. I'll give you an example. During our time, during my lot, they had introduced something to do with mezzanine financing, mezzanine loans, private equity. And these are things my uni, while at undergrad, had addressed during our business associations classes. So for us, when we got to LDC, most guys that were at UCU, we didn't find hard time addressing those things because we had initially studied them, right? But now, it was a very new concept at LDC, even for some of the PAs, right? It's something that was new because of the Bitature case. Now, that is a topic in corporate and commercial that most people in my lot feared, right? They found it a bit complicated and very complex and whatnot and all, yeah? So many people focused on reading that, even me as well. But like I said, luckily for me, or luckily for my colleagues that what you see, we had studied it at undergrad, so it wasn't that scary kind of topic, yeah? So now, interestingly, my very own question on my corporate and commercial question is how is a law firm formed? It sounds basic, right? But you will find that many of my colleagues probably wouldn't have addressed their minds to it. I was very lucky. I want to appreciate my friend whose name I would love to share, but for purposes of privacy, I don't know whether they would permit this. So I would want to thank you very much. You know yourself. I remember we're having lunch sometime before orals, and he told me that, Lisa, please do not ignore even the simplest of questions, because of the things that seem basic that a person will be asking you, thinking that, okay, yes, you'll be able to answer and probably pass, but then you would fail, right? So something as small as how is a law firm formed? Sounds very basic, law counsel permission, seeking permission, documentation, life, those things, what do those acts say and all, right? It is something very basic, but that is a question I was asked. So while preparing for orals, whereas we may want to tend to focus and concentrate on the very hard topics, it's also very important for you to also look at things that are very basic. Right? Like in the event you probably, let's say, want to alter a certificate of title, what documentations do you have? You may choose to focus on the complicated and really, really hard topics, and yet the simplest of things will be asked and you may not be in position to answer. So as you prepare, also focus on the very, very, very simple and basic questions, because they will help you. Who knows, probably you go before a panel and all your questions are very simple and very basic, and probably if you answer them right, you probably score high marks. I remember my other question on the corporate panel was about insurance, that a building at LDC has been banned by fire. You're the lawyer, help them. I remember I answered this question till the response to appeal. Like, I answered that, oh yes, the policy, I look at the policy, blah blah blah, and all that, which insurance tribunal, if it fails, we do this, we do that, we opt for appeal and everything. You get? So these are things you shouldn't ignore. Don't mainly focus on the extremely, extremely hard things. Look at the basic things. What does a registrar want? A registrar needs what kind of documentation? They'll tell you probably a police officer, probably there's this police form this, form that. So as you read, do not only focus on complicated things, also look out for the easy things, because despite you being scared of orals, even easy questions. So like I was saying, yes, do not ignore the basic, the tiniest things, right? Simply because you're focusing on the hard things. Yes, it is true, they are very capable of asking you the very hard, complicated questions, but it cannot be the story all through in all the course units. You get? I'll give an example. I think in my corporate and commercial panel, one of my questions was clauses in a distributorship agreement. So imagine that, I remember one of the things I said was the non-exclusivity. Not non-exclusivity, the exclusivity clause, right? It's something very basic, right? Okay, I'm presuming it's basic, but yeah, it's something that is something that you would probably ignore, but luckily I'd address my mind to it. So whereas you choose to focus on the hard things, also remember that even the easy questions can be asked as well. I'll give you an example. The Trade Licensing Act, right? There is a decision of court. I think it's a high court decision. It's pertaining to judicial review. There are quite a number of cases, but would be Uganda Law Society versus KCCA, right? Where a court held that law firms are not supposed to pay, those trade licensing fees, right? Simply because it's illegal and it would amount to double taxation by virtue of the fact that as a law firm, you pay a particular fee to law counsel, and the entire chamber inspections, approve and blah 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 and all that shenanigans. I don't want to go deep into those details, but it sounds something very basic. It sounds something very simple, right? But that is something that they presume that you probably know. But because your mind is so clogged on, oh my God, mezzanine, private equity funds, and not that private equity funds and all is bad or something. It's very good for you to appreciate that, but at the same time, appreciate something that's very basic. I've given an example of a Trade Licensing Act. It's something we choose not to address our minds to, but you get, yeah. So look into that. So that's tip number 3. Let's get straight into tip number 4. So tip number 4. Right, tip number 4 is one that's going to make me sound a little bit like a mama, but I have no choice, is for you to be very smart. Yes, smartness helps create an impression. We're only human. There are small things that impress us. It's very important for you to be very smart. I'll give an example. I'm sorry I'm going to keep referring to this statement, but during my lot, we're supposed to only strictly wear black and white. And that was a law, I think, that was brought up when it had already started, I think, when we're a few days into LDC. So that means we had already finished shopping. So the unfortunate bit is that by the time we got to second term, most of our black suits were pale. So we had to purchase new suits to look presentable because most of our suits had become pale. So I know it could be a bit financially straining, but it helps, it doesn't hurt. You could try to get like a new suit such that you're able to display and don't have, like how sometimes you want to like have like a very darker black shade of the coat, then a bit of a pale skirt. I know sometimes financially we can be constrained It happens, we are humans and it's life, but it helps when you invest in yourself. At least you invest in that one particular soup that you know that for all the 5 days you're going to be engaged or indulged in these orals. You're going to be very smart and smartly dressed and everything. For the ladies, the hair, keep it backward. I know right now I have colored hair, but that's something I wouldn't advise the ladies to have. I don't know much about the rules at LDC now. Probably they relaxed them or they're a bit strict, but it is no secret that most of the people that teach at LDC are a bit mature. So the level of legal training they went through is different from the legal training that I went through and probably you're going through right now. Right, so it helps like for you to have really black hair. If it's to be colored, let that color be calm and everything. You get it helps create an impression of a smart lawyer. That's what we are. Okay, like no, that's what we are, but it helps. So be smart. It helps create on the impression you enter. For the gentlemen, of course, the ties have to be, For the ladies, it also helps when you're decent and you're not scandalously dressed. It helps. So they seem a bit small and tiny, but these are things that help create an impression for you to earn marks. And the goal is to earn marks and leave the place. So being smart, staying away from scandalous clothes. Ladies, it really does help. That's a tip that I know that will help you excel your orals. Yeah, that's tip number 4. Tip number 5 is for you to explain as much as you can. Right? Sometimes you're probably going to be asked a question that's a bit straightforward. Okay, you have to gauge. There are some questions that will be asked and are really pretty much straightforward that you don't have to, say much, blabber much. But there are those questions that seem a bit straightforward, but there's a lot of meat, beef to it. So it helps when you help explain as much as you can. I'll give you an example. So probably not that you'll be asked this particular question in that same way, but they could probably ask you, what is a temporary injunction? Like any other law student, you'd be like, Chimba Kagwa versus Abdul Nasser Katende. Yeah? Court held status quo, conditions. It's very possible, right? But it helps when you help to explore more. You say, my understanding, thank you so much for that question, but my understanding of an injunction in general is this kind of this and this and this. There are different types of injunctions. You have the temporary injunctions themselves, like you have asked. You'll have a mandatory injunction. You'll have an interim injunctions. You talk about the Anton Pillar, you talk about the ex parte injunctions, blah blah blah. But like you have said, in specific response to a temporary injunction, in the case of Chimba Kagwa versus Katende, court expounded and said bichi, laid out the conditions for the grant of the temporary injunctions, and these include a prima facie case. Now, a prima facie case in that case was explained to me this. There's a huge difference between the person who just goes straight to Chimba Kagwa and the difference between me who has tried to explore and explain. I don't know whether you get what I mean. So it's very important for you to gauge. There are some questions that require to be straightforward. Like for instance, when I ask you, what documents do I need? Let's say in the event I have, for instance, the land panel. What documentations does a registrar require of you to have when you've probably made an application for, let's say, a special certificate of title, that you need this. That's a straightforward question for you to say, you need this, a police letter, blah, 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 national ID, and all those things, right? But when, like, for instance, the civil question I've given you, there's a huge difference. So it's very important for you to apply knowledge, basic knowledge, for you to be able to distinguish that this is a very straightforward question, and this is a question that probably I would say much. Sometimes, if the particular PA who has asked that question wants you to go straight to the point, they would probably get it, like, no, counsel, you don't need to go that far. Just please share with us what this is. You also have to heed the advice. So yeah, that's tip number 5. So tip number 6 is also equally very important. I think I should have brought it up, I think, as tip number 2 or 3, is for you to heed to the guidance of the peers or of the panelists, right? Now, for you to be able to have the knowledge to heed to the advice or guidance of the peers or the panelists is if you have read. Sometimes you'll be asked a question, and while explaining, there's a possibility that you could probably be going off, messing up. And one of the panelists would probably be prompted to say, "Are you sure, counsel? Are you sure?" Now, sometimes that "are you sure" comes into either confirm whether you know what you're talking about, or when you've probably been on the right track and are probably messing up. So for you to be able to, for you to be able to pick that guidance is when probably you have read. So I think it all goes back to you must read and prepare, such that by the time this "are you sure" counsel comes in, you're probably able to distinguish and be like, "Oh, I think I'm being guided. I think probably I'm messing up here. I think I need to do this. I think I need to do that." But be that as it may, we're acting on a presumption that you've read and are probably looking for tips on how to excel to excel at your orals is to be able to heed at the guidance. Sometimes the "are you sure" counsel will come in if you're probably off track, or they're trying to gauge and see, is this person very sure of what they're talking about? But for you to be able to pick that is when you have probably read. So you have to be able to heed to it. Sometimes you also have to be, not even sometimes, you must be ready to, sometimes you're going to be interrupted. Yeah. Now that interruption comes in to also check you. It could come in to check you. It could also come in to guide you. They'll probably ask you a question, and probably the person has asked you, but they've said this. I'll use temporary injunction. "You're sure? Chimba kagwa. Prima facie case. But okay, yes, it's at the discretion of court. What's your take on that discretion of court? Is court using it wisely? Do you think there's need to have like a standardized kind of criteria that all courts must follow? Sometimes these questions are going to probably come and you're probably going to get confused, but it's very important for you to be calm and listen to what the person is saying. Sometimes it's to check you. Sometimes it's also to guide you, like in the event you're going off track, or I could interrupt because I'm in agreement with you. So whatever it is, be calm, heed to the guidance that will be given. Yes, that's tip number 6. So I'm going to merge my 7th and 8th tip together. My 7th tip is for you to, for me, something that worked for me is that I tried my level best to stay away from campus until I was very certain my number was about to come. What do I mean? Now, first, I was at the Lira campus, the beautiful Lira campus. So, of course, we were few in number during our time. We're about 250. We weren't more than that. So that means that we sort of like knew each other. We probably know that this is so and so's registration number. So in this lane we're about 5. So we had contacts of each other. So I would always ascertain, is my panel, am I going to face the panel in the morning or in the afternoon? If it was in the morning, I'd be ready by 8. But I would always stay away from school. Not that it was hard or something, but I'll try my level best to stay away from school, because guys would come out of the panel and say, "Oh my God, they asked me this." Sometimes someone would come out of the same panel we're headed for, and they probably come out and their eyes are red and they are sweating. We are human, right? So this definitely would sort of like mess with my mental preparedness. So what I would do is that I always stayed away from school unless I knew I was about like 5 people. Like let's say if like I'm number 6 and like number 1 is in, I would probably I would like be prepared, like fully dressed, but then be in my room reading, preparing, quizzing myself with my friends and all. So it would help. I would sort of like stay away from the crowd. It helped because, sometimes guys would come out of the bar like, "Oh my God, yeah, guys, they have asked me this. I have failed. This guy is really hard." So for me, that alone would trigger my nerves and I would try to stay away. But the 8th tip as well is that try to familiarize yourself with the with the people with whom you move with. Of course, first thing that time when they prepare, they would release that, so this one, so this registration number, this one, this one, this one. So sort of like know ourselves. So probably keep communicating that where have they started, which number they on. So be in close contact with the people with whom you share the panel with. Try to reach out and find out, right, who they are. Also be on time, because if they sort of like look for you and then you're nowhere to be found, and then when they find you, people come and say, oh my god, they have been looking for you, where are you? You know, it sort of like disorganizes your mental capacity. So it's very important and very key for you to make friends with guys, to at least familiarize yourself. Don't self-isolate from people. Yeah, that's my tip number 7 and tip number 8. So my tip number 9, and probably the last tip from me, is that as you prepare for these orals, as you read, it's also very important for you to try to discuss with your colleagues. I had a discussion group at my hostel. I was at Lira and I slept at the beautiful Maracot. So at Maracot, we sort of like had a discussion group, and it helped. And when you're discussing, it's not basically just looking at a book and saying this is to probably check yourself, okay, in this topic, this and this and this and this. It helps when you're in continuous check with each other. Also, you're not going to be in position like to have the same oral questions. Like I could probably you could be having family, and then your other colleague is having civil, and then the other is having corporate. So in the event you're done with family and probably your next oral is corporate, it's very important for you to ascertain which of your friends have finished the corporate panel, what questions did they ask them. You try to familiarize yourself with the panelists. Tell me, you on the corporate panel? Oh really? I've been told that council so and so is on this particular panel. How are they? Are they a bit complicated and whatnot? So you would know how to conduct and how to carry yourself on that panel. Also, as you enter those different panels, please do have an open mind. Yes, that's tip number 9. So probably let's go for tip number 10. So tip number 10, and the last tip for the day, is walk into these panels with an open mind. It doesn't matter what my opinion, what Lisa's opinion is of the panelists on the civil litigation panel, for as long as you're entering, let's say, the civil panel, enter it with an open mind. What Lisa would have experienced with the civil litigation panel it does not mean it's going to be the same experience that you're going to have while you enter that particular panel. So enter with an open mind. Simply because so and so has told you that, oh my god, that panel, when you enter, there's this guy, he's seated like that, he's in a red tie. Once you carry that kind of attitude, there is a likelihood that you're going to mess with your mental capacity, and it will affect how you address those particular questions. Because you imagine, if I have told you that on that particular panel, the person in the red tie, that guy is very complicated, and imagine the moment you enter that particular panel, the chairman of the panel introduces themselves and they say that particular gentleman with the red tie is then going to question you. So obviously in your head you're going to be like, oh my god. You get, and yet when you have a very open mind, and then they mention to you that the gentleman with the red tie is going to ask you those particular questions, you'll be like, okay, thank you very much. You will appreciate them, or appreciate the questions they ask you with an open mind. I'll share with you my experience still. I think we're headed for the land transactions panel. There is a particular panelist, everyone was saying, oh my god, that guy is very complicated, he asks very difficult questions. And in my head I said, I'm not going to let that mess with my mental capacity. The moment I entered that panel, of course, as usual, with a very big smile, I entered. I was like, hello, how are you, good to see you, blah blah blah. So, and guess what? The same gentleman everybody was saying is very complicated, the chairperson of the panel said he was going to be one of the people going to ask me a question. In my head I said, very well, thank you. And guess what? I don't recall the particular question this person asked me. I think it was in relation to a lease. It was a very simple question. and I answered it. Oh, I've remembered something. I'm going to share with you. Tip number 11. So be very open-minded. You get? Even if someone tells you that panel has the most complicated or the easiest, be as open-minded, because Lisa is experienced in that particular panel. Can never be your experience. However hard or complicated they may be, it doesn't matter. They were hard and complicated to me too. Probably the way I answered the question, or probably the way I carried myself before that panel. But if you enter that panel with a very open mind, and then they ask you your questions and then you address them, trust me, you'll have a very nice experience. I hope to stop on tip number 10, but I think I remember something that's very key, and I'll be sharing with you tip number 11. Tip number 11, the unintended tip, is for you. You remember, I think around tip number 7 or 8, I did make mention of the fact that you should be very careful with the crowds you deal with. Now, I am bringing it in forward in tip number 11. Be very careful of the crowds you're dealing with. And I'm going to tell you that, share that with you, based off my personal experience. I remember I was headed for my land transactions panel, and there's this lady who was, I think, 9 people, or probably she was probably like number 9, I was probably like number 17. So she comes out of curiosity. I rushed to her, I'm like, oh my god, what did they ask you? And then she tells me, I don't recall the particular question, but it was in regards to a lease, right? Then she was like, they asked me this question, I told them it's this, and they said, no, impossible, that's wrong, what? So I'm like, hey, but the first answer you said, that's what was supposed to be correct, And she's like, I don't know, they jumped the answer, they told me no, cancel, there's another answer. So she was like, I was very confused, what, and all those things. I'm like, really? Now, guess what? When I entered for my land transactions paper, that's the same question I was asked. Now, during the discussion, the chick told me the answer that was right. She was like, I answered that question, then they told me I am wrong, but then I gave them this answer, and then one of them nodded their heads. You get? So when I reached this land transactions Gundi panel, they asked me that question. Then I'm like, but it was, but then in my head I was like, but the chick said that this answer was wrong, but the answer was the right one. So I adopted what the answer she had said. And one of the guys on the panel was like, cause are you sure? In my head I picked the girl. I was like, no, I beg to retract that statement. What I actually meant is this. I don't recall the exact question, but it was in regards to leases. So be very careful with the things you choose to listen to from the crowds. That's why I was saying that one of the things that helped me, in fact, the land panel was my second panel. I was coming from my family panel, which went well. Then I think I was headed for my land transactions panel. Now it's during my land transactions panel, the second panel, when I realized that crowds are a bit dangerous, because everybody is sharing their experience, and if you're not very careful, you can end up picking the wrong answers. But hey, we're all different. It doesn't mean that if it worked for me, it will probably work for you. Probably there are people who prefer to be with the crowds. And yeah, you can do you as well. But yeah, that's my tip number 11, unsolicited for. Yeah. Thank you guys. I hope you've enjoyed this vlog. Yeah, I look forward to sharing more things with you, especially about my legal journey. I have been late on uploading vlogs. For that I am sorry, but like I said, life is lifing for me, and I believe it's also lifing for you. But since it's the new year 2025, I promise myself to do better generally, and among my new year resolutions, I know it's March, is this YouTube channel, to grow it and to be more intentional about it. So I look forward to sharing my journey with you more and more, and probably chip in when I can for my LDC peeps, and also generally lawyers in general. So till next time, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the vlog, and in the event you're watching and you're not subscribed, please do press the subscription button, and please don't forget to hit the notification bell. In the event I upload a video, you're among the first to know. Please share, subscribe, tell a friend who knows a guy that knows a guy that knows a guy that there's a chick has very amazing stuff in her legal memoir. Till next time, Lisa Jemba is my name. I sign out. Peace.